live. Figured it out?
I did.
Fabulous.
You should hire me for this stuff.
Hire me? Well, you never wanted to work. Oh.
Yeah, I did. I did. Hey Morgan, can you hear me okay back there? Good. Justin, how's the volume? Can you hear me?
What's your other t-shirt? What's your other one?
That's from Masquerade down in Texas. He's online, so I'm trying to see if the volume's good. I just think I was horrible. I went to houses today that had no AC. It's 110 degrees in there. One of them had like illegal finished space in the attic, and I'm up there trying to measure to see. Yeah, it was pretty rough. Alright, nobody's complaining about the volume online, so I'm gonna go round up the crew outside. They're all looking at some fancy red car.
I know. You the only soldier?
I probably could get more if I
Long way to go.
What's that song pitch?
Yeah, seriously. No, I yeah.
is there by that's tax?
Right. Right. Very difficult.
Oh, switching up. You want to
How long did you come here? For about 1 month. Or I can
We're going to get started in about 3 minutes, so if you want to grab some food back there, go for it. Bathrooms are all down at the far end, and if you need a smoke break, you got to go out to the right, all the way down the hall and outside there. Volume okay? High, low? It sounds high to me. A little high?
But I mean, it's all.
All right, well, good evening, everybody. This still seems a little loud for me. It's nice that it's actually working today. Is it hot enough out there for everybody? Who saw what the weather's going to be like this weekend? It's supposed to have like a heat index of 110 or something crazy like that. So they say if you don't have to be outside, you should probably stay inside. So fortunately for me, I signed up for a Century Ride, and it's this Saturday, so that'll be fun. So welcome to Invest NWI. The purpose of our group is to bring together investors of all different levels for a relevant real estate education, as well as a place to grow your personal network. So we have people in here that have never ever done a deal, and I get calls all the time, hey, I want to learn more about it. So I'm like, hey, come to the group. You'll learn about everything from rentals to flipping to lending and everything in between. And we have people in the group that have been doing real estate for, I don't know, probably 50 years. They've done a lot of deals. I'm looking at Jim, 50 years, right? Started when he was like 4. So a couple of benefits of being part of the group, networking with experienced investors. It doesn't make sense to learn from your own mistakes when half the people in the group have probably done a lot of the same things over and over again. So just learn from their mistakes. Education through our monthly speakers. We have a great speaker tonight. Great place to get connected with lawyers, contractors, accountants, landlords, real estate agents, property managers. Great place to get deals done. We've had lots of people in the group that have sold properties to people in the group, bought properties, lent money, loaned money, done joint ventures, etc. Real quick disclaimer. The material and content presented today is for educational purposes only. It's not legal advice. Don't take it that way. The content presented is recollection of the speaker's personal experiences, their success and or failure. Definitely consult with your own professionals prior to engaging in any activities here. Summary of the disclaimer. Do your own due diligence. Speak with your professional circle. All investments have risk. You may lose money. Who's lost money on a real estate deal? A few people. When I got started, I was told if I never lost money, I wasn't working hard enough. So, who did something this month? Tom has the mic. We got one up here and one back there. 2 people. That's like a record this month.
I closed on one of my biggest profits yet. since I started flipping, and I closed on number 10 deal. So closed on buying my number 10 house.
Okay. Rental, or is this one going to be a flip too?
Flip.
Cool. All the way up front, Tom. This is where you get your exercise for the meeting. So you're going to have to do a presentation like probably next month on that one.
Which one?
The one that you just
Oh,
closed.
the
Yeah.
Hey Adrian, I closed on a burnout property on East 85th Street in Chicago and made $30,000 on it.
There you go. That was a wholesale deal?
Yes.
That's solid. I think that has me beat this year. Anyone else do anything this month? Buy something, sell something, flip something? A couple of tips and tools. If you're not part of the Facebook group, it's Invest NWI Investor Group. Great place to post questions about real estate. Someone this week posted a question about an issue they're having with a tenant. Great place to search for contractors that other people in the group have used. We also post information about the upcoming speakers in that group, so just a great place to get connected as well. Real quick before I do memberships, Brian, I want to get Brian the mic. Brian is one of our vendors. This is his month to talk 30 seconds about what he does. He's with Caliber Loans, does a lot of refinances for people in the group. Use him all the time.
We live? Okay. Just if anyone would like information in the back afterwards, I'll be here when the meeting ends. I've done, obviously, several cash out refinances for investors in the club. Obviously, I can help if you want to purchase. I also have a new loan program that will allow me to lend directly to an LLC. So if you're interested in that, just stop by at the end.
LLCs for single family homes, which is hard to find. So, good program there. Membership, if you're not interested in being a member, you can just pay as you come. It's $15 a month. That helps cover the food, the cost of the room, the internet website that we have, all that. If you're looking for a little bit of a deal, it's $120 for an individual, $160 for couples. Some of the perks, we have the member-only website. For the members here, have you guys logged into the new website?
Not yet.
Not yet. I can tell because it gives me like a dashboard. Log into that. I mean, we've paid good money to put that website together. It has an archive of all of the videos that we've recorded going back to the middle of 2017, so you can watch all the previous speakers. You also get the monthly magazine, the gift box. Facebook Live streaming, if you can't happen to make it to a meeting, you can watch it live if you want, or again, you can go on the website. So catch Morgan after the meeting or myself, and we'll get you set up with that. Morgan, do you have any more guest coupon raffles? So this group is only as valuable as the people here. Our speakers are good. I'm not taking any credit for the group. No one wants to listen to me speak. The biggest part of the group, the value, is in the people that you meet here in the network. And in order to grow your network, we need to grow the group. So this is a fun thing that we've been doing. When you bring a guest, you get a raffle ticket. So today we have 3 prizes. Home Depot gift card, which is kind of standard. I went into our vault and got Dick's Sporting Goods. So you can get all your stuff for this weekend. And then coffee mug, whatever. So let's see.
Adrian, I don't think Nick got a ticket. I came before him, so I signed in. And
Did you not get one?
No, I didn't.
Can we get one more, Morgan, real quick? Now you're going to get the gift card. Who's here for the first time tonight? How did you guys hear about the group? Friend, Facebook, Bigger Pockets. Facebook's big. Word of mouth isn't biggest, so I have a lot tonight. Craigslist, anybody? No? Alright, I think I'm going to stop posting there. Alright, grab one. Let's see if this person's here still. I'll just last 4, 6820. 6820. Nick, is that yours? 6820, the last 4. Really? There we go. You want Home Depot, Dick's, mug. I was Tom Brady. And last four, 6830.
Oh, what do you know?
Yeah?
What,
We have Home Depot and the mug.
is there anybody doing a reno job right now? Yeah. So you have the Home Depot. Yeah, whoever is doing a reno.
All right, I'll shuffle these up. We don't want people sitting next to each other. All right, one more. There we go. And this is 6831. So whoever came in right after you. There you go.
Hey.
Awesome. We appreciate you bringing guests. All right, Mr. Holtzman, come on up. So this is a fun part. I do kind of copy the TV shows. The thing I don't like about the TV shows is they always leave out a lot of details. You know, they'll be like, oh, I bought the house for $100,000. I was going to put 50 into it. I sold it for $200,000, and everything was perfect, and we made 50. We know that's not reality, so I like to have people who are in our area, flipping houses or rentals or whatever, actually talk about reality. So Eric has a cool story here. Eric is one of the property managers I use, and this is a house in Hammond that he flipped and almost set a record. Hold on, let me clear this up. You got to be in this area so we can get you on the screen.
Yeah, so I mean, I know a lot of you guys probably had troubles finding deals. I know a big complaint has been margins. So I'm going to kind of go over a project that we did at EMH Investments that kind of was a different way to maybe find your properties for those of you that maybe have bigger portfolios and stuff. So I do rental management, general contracting, I'm licensed, and I also do investing buying. Thank you. So we did a property in Hammond last fall. It's a father-son team. Me and my father kind of run the business, and we were looking for a project for the winter, and my dad came up with taking one of our rentals, value-adding it with a very large renovation to see what we could push it to. So 7505 Jackson Avenue was a property in Hammond, Indiana that we purchased from a sheriff's sale in September 2017. It was a 2-bed, 1-bath with a 1 floor and an unfinished basement. But it's a Cape Cod style, so you'll see that in the photos here. I thought they came up right away, but they don't. We did about a $4,000 rehab to get it rental ready, and we put it in our books at $52,000, and we rented it for $800 a month for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath at Hammond. In that time frame, that was pretty good. So you can kind of see the property there. As you can see, it had a very large attic area, but that was no access. There was no stairwell, no nothing to get there. So this was actually a rental pictures. We actually got it, hit the window treatments in it, but we did some general painting. We refinished the hardwood floors real quick before we did it as a rental, and we rented that within a month. So when it was rented, we were going through it, and my dad said, hey, we can convert this. A lot of you are probably saying, how did I get it to a 4-2 with Hammond not wanting bedrooms in the basement? We went up. So as you can see, we decided to convert it to a 4-2. We started with a $52,000 home cost. We adjusted that down because we collected rent profits. So we put it on our flip acquisition price of $43,400. I started with an $80,000 rehab budget, and we were planning on completely gutting basically everything. It was 1,000 square feet, and we converted it to over 2,600 square feet. We went ahead during the project and decided to finish the basement. When we originally started, we had no intentions on doing that, but we seen that we think we could push the comps. Quite honestly, we started running over budget, and we knew to hit an appraisal number, we're going to have to finish the basement. So I had an estimated sale price of $180 on this house in the winter of last year. We significantly did over that. I threw some photos in here of during the construction. I will tell everyone, and you'll see this later on, work with your town. I know some people here work without permits. I know some people here do that. This is not a flip or renovation you can do without permits. You know, this is not just a simple job. We had to get permits done. We had to get drawings submitted with the town. We had to get nothing necessarily engineered stamped, but they had to know every step of what we were doing. So we went ahead and measured our ridge height. That's really the key. And we could see with our slope, we could get 7 foot. And for those of you that are realtors here know, to get the appraisal, Alex is over here shaking his head, that room has got to be 7 foot for the appraisers to give it to you. So here's our kind of our actual cost breakdown. We had a purchase price of $43,400 after our rental adjustment. We ended up going $96,853 on the rehab for an all-in cost of $140,000. If you look at my $180,000 sale price I was thinking about, we were pretty good. We ended up listing it for $199,999. The person who I worked for at the time at Coldwell Banker thought I was nuts, but I listed it anyway, and within 48 hours we had a bidding war, and we ended up settling. I had a 220 that I did not take because it was an FHA deal. I went with a 210 number. I liked the lender better. It was an FHA deal as well, but I just liked the lender better. So we got $190 net less commissions and fees. Now, I put this in here kind of as an average flipper number. I mean, I was the realtor on the deal, and I'd also save fees, so there was realistically more profit there than that. But this was a long rehab. I mean, we started in October, which was a bad time to start any rehab, but we didn't really complete it until May 10th of this year. We had our final on April 30th, but we had more to do. There's some kind of pictures of the finished product. As you can see, we opened up a lot of walls. We took out walls everywhere. We took out every piece of drywall, every piece of plaster in this building. That's kind of some before and afters. So that's the same kitchen, same dining room. You can see how closed off they had it. I think this house was built in 1920 or 1929. So we basically left the original wood and everything else is new. Kind of the stuff, as I said, I learned. Permits, permits, permits. I did not realize the amount of drawings the city of Hamlin was going to need to do this project. That definitely delayed us a couple months. And really, double your time and your budget if any of you guys want to take on a project like this. Dormering a house and doing all that structural work. Make sure you're hiring an experienced contractor. Don't necessarily take the cheapest price because it can get you in a lot of problems. The framing on the house determines your drywall, determines everything else going down the road. Any questions?
What was the cost?
What was the cost of the house when it was a 2-1? What kind of profits if you just flipped it as is?
Me and Adrian were talking about this today. Hammond's a very hard market to comp. I don't really know what it would have been if I would have flipped it as is. I've seen numbers as high as 130 in that neighborhood for 2-1s with a garage finish, but that's without a finished basement. So if I would have finished the basement, could I have pushed it to 150? Either way, I don't think it can get anywhere close to that 2 number. Any other questions?
Would you do it again?
Yes. Yes, I would do it again. It wasn't that bad of a project, to be honest. It was just, I honestly thought it was easier than finishing the basement, dealing with sump pumps and everything else.
Did the tenants just leave on their own after a year and that was what sparked it?
Good question. No, their lease was up. But any of those in here who uses Jonathan Peterson's lease, I think it's section 29, he has that nice right to cancel. So we could have done that. We had another unit. So even though this tenant wasn't happy, I moved her to another unit. But her lease was expiring, to answer your question.
Aaron, did you take the whole attic off and build a second, or you just did the one side dormer?
No, good question. I'll run back here. So we were able, one thing that I didn't even bring up here, we were able to leave this side of the house on. So I didn't have a good picture of the hallway, but the hallway was slanted. So when you walked into the hallway to get to the bedrooms, it was a slanted ceiling. It went from 7 foot down to like 6'2". But the bedrooms, that's all we took out. We did replace the ridge beam, and if you notice, we actually put eaves on the house. That was a lot of money that we could have saved, but my father wanted to put eaves on the house for the look and the curb appeal, so we did it. But we did end up redecking the whole roof because of the eaves. We did not have to do that because of the door.
Did you hire all this work out, or did you do most of it yourself?
Really good question. So this project I did 100% with me and my guys and my crew. The one gentleman asked me if I would do it again. I wouldn't do it again if it was a summer project where I had my crew doing other things. I did not do it the most efficient with my crew. I think the product's really good and we did a great job, but I would have hired out. I'll be honest with you, we didn't have an estimated schedule. It was something new we've never done. I knew it was changing, and really when Hammond took it to when I went to ask them about doing it, and they brought up the fact that I need prints and everything, I was shooting for a spring. So I was really shooting for a early spring launch, because that's ideal for houses. We got it probably a month and a half later than I'd like to.
Since it was a rental, are you paying short-term or long-term capital gains on it?
Good question. I sold it this year, so I don't know.
They want to find out.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'll be honest with you, I'm not the expert in that. I just kind of handle everything to my accountant, tell me what I owe. I would think it'd be short term, right? I mean, I held it.
It all depends. And if
2 years, I don't know.
Short term, now you just lost 50% in taxes.
Yeah.
Of your profit. So a lot of people don't understand that.
I agree with you. It was. I love the comp for Hammond because I work a lot in Hammond. I do a lot of work in Hammond, so I really like the comp, but I do miss having it as a rental portfolio product. So there's a give and take. But if you look at the profit that we end up making on this property, we couldn't have made that in the rental market with taxes going up the way they are, and you're limited on a 2-bedroom. So I could have, I could have done what some people do and slam in bedrooms in the basement, play the game and try not to get caught and boost the rental price. But I'm not into that. I own a lot of properties in Hammond, so I keep them all above board. And that's really the only reason why I did it. If this was a 3-bedroom and I was getting over $1,000 a month in rent, I probably would have never pulled this out of the rental portfolio.
If you would have kept it as a buy and hold, what could you have gotten for rent on it?
We were getting $800 a month. I would say today, a 2-bedroom with this garage.
No, I'm talking of the 3. If you converted it and kept it.
Oh, good question. So we actually originally talked about that when we bought the property. That's how we knew that the ridge could support a 7-feet bedroom. We looked at the cost of doing that, which would have been roughly about $35,000 without adding the bathroom and everything, versus just converting it, and the profit margin was better. You're only going to add $200-300 a month if you add a bedroom. So your payback on that $30,000 would have been a very long time. And that's assuming we could have left everything on the first floor. And that's going to get damaged with guys working in the attic, what have you. I will tell you one thing that I think flippers get in a habit of when they're really getting into a house. I know Mark's had a few that he's had a lot of big projects in. I'm a firm believer if you're getting into a house this deep, gut it completely. You're faster, you're money ahead. I understand you got to bring up the current code with the towns and everything like we had to do here, but I can tell you it made the put together process and the inspection process unbelievable. The home inspector was pillar to post, and he said that this is the best flip that he's seen, and I said, yeah, because it's basically a new construction. The service, it's not just a new service, every piece of conduit was new. We put in all PEX plumbing, all the PVC drains were all converted to PVC. So, it basically was a new construction house when we were done. And apparently the appraiser thought so too. Any other ones?
Now you just trained all your competition to come at me.
Here's a question. I just have one question. Since you are experienced in Hammond, how hard was it for you to deal with the permits?
Hammond is a very unique town. A lot of people here will agree with that. I don't know, I feel like if you play by the rules at Hammond and everyone understands that the city inspectors and what have you have a job to do and they're going to do it no matter what, it's like anything, you got to play with their personalities. I know there's a lot of people here who have a lot of issues with Hammond. There's a lot of people here who do great things in Hammond. They're not the easiest town to get permits in. It's just truth. But I feel like no matter who you ask, every town's different on their personal opinion.
Awesome, thanks for that. That was helpful. All right, we have a pleasure tonight of hearing from Attorney Jeff Jinks, who came all the way up from Carmel, Indiana. If you are in the Facebook group, you'll see every once in a while we'll have an updated video that he does on usually one of the new Indiana state statutes that affects us. So I saw that, thought it'd be a good idea to have him come up and update us on some of that. And then if we still have time, we're going to go into some fun stuff like creative financing and a lot of Q&A. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Adrian. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jeff Jinks. I'm an attorney from Indianapolis, Carmel area, and I want to talk about a number of things tonight to help you out. First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here and tell you a little bit about our law firm and who we are, what we do, that kind of a thing. And first of all, we have 3 other lawyers in the firm besides me. So it's me and 3 younger lawyers. We also have some law clerks. We're very fortunate to have 2 of them that have gone on to be on law review. And law review, for anybody who doesn't know what's going on in law school, that's for the super smart, super good writers. So we've just been blessed like crazy to have these really good clerks and writers for us working on our team. And I do approach it that way, that this is a team effort for you, for our clients that we're trying to serve. So a couple things that are important about that. Of course, we got paralegal and support staff and all that. But people always ask me that point number 2, see if I can get it. Right, point number 2, unlike other law firms, right, that's our quote, because everybody always says, what kind of lawyer are you? What kind of law do you practice? And I really just say, unlike other law firms, we don't talk about ourselves, we don't care. That we define ourselves by the people we serve, which is real estate investors. I've been practicing law for 26 years, and more than half of that time has been devoted to real estate investors. That's the only people we represent. So those are brand new investors. Like this week, I've got a lady from up in this region that's doing her very first deals. Never done anything in real estate before, but she's diving in with both feet, and so we're helping her with some LLCs and some different things like that. My biggest client ever was a guy's worth $50 million or more. So it's crazy, but it's the same, a lot of it is the same type of thought and the same type of projects. It's just maybe bigger projects, more zeros or whatever, but it's always the same thought process built into it. So if you're a newbie investor, I'm used to working with you and trying to help you learn the ropes and not make mistakes. We're always trying to help people avoid the problems. I think Adrian made a great point earlier tonight. He's like, learn from the experience of everybody in the group so you don't make the same mistakes they did. Like my very first real estate investment, I bought a burnout, except I didn't know it was a burnout. I got sold this property. I was like, yeah, this would be great. I'm a lawyer. I know what I'm doing. Wrong. I totally had no idea what I was doing. Me and my buddy bought it. We put it on our credit cards. We're like, oh my gosh, it's a burnout. How are we going to get rid of this thing? We ended up flipping it to another investor who was buying a portfolio. We came out of it okay. We made some money on it. I literally was losing my mind. And so when you said that today, I was like, oh my gosh, it still happens, right? Burnouts are still there. So all different kind of things. I've seen all different kind of things to try to help you. I do have the social media stuff. I'm going to give it to you at the end, all the links. As Adrian indicated, we put out a lot of video blogs. And I started doing that because I was too lazy to write, these articles, and it was too cumbersome. So I just said I'm going to turn on the camera and tell people what's happening on new cases that are coming out, new things that are published opinions, right? So every day in my inbox from the courthouse, I get new appellate and Supreme Court cases as well as other things. And so I just try to look for the ones that are of interest. It might be zoning, it might be estate planning, it might be some kind of weird probate thing. It could be homeowner covenants, homeowner association covenant litigation, all different kind of things. And I just try to summarize it. I don't use a script, not because I'm smart, but I just try to, put it in what I would want to know if I was sitting where you are. And I just fly off the cuff and give you the main points. They're only 2 minutes, maybe 5 minutes long, and it's just a quick update. So hit us on social media. We post them through Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, the whole 9 yards, so you can get up to date on what's going on. There's no cost, there's no obligation. You're not going to be getting solicited constantly or anything like that. It's pure information. We just want to serve in that way the best thing that we can. So I want to summarize. We want to help you make a deal and avoid bad ones, and we represent all different kind of investors from the beginning to super experienced people. And I always am curious why newer investors don't hire legal counsel, because the guys that are worth $1 million or $5 million or $10 million, they're hiring us. They've got way more experience. So that means that they see the value in getting some legal counsel. And we don't do all the work, of course, but they'll call us with a question. They'll call us to look at some part of their due diligence or just an aspect of the case, right? So they're always looking for things. And I really appreciate that. Tonight, I'm going to give you a quick overview. We're going to hit House Bill 1347. Some of you have followed that, some of you haven't. It's a very interesting story. I know legislation might seem super boring, but it's actually very exciting what happened behind the scenes here. I'm going to talk a little bit about land contracts, because what almost happened this year in the legislature, how many people have done a land contract, right? Very common investment vehicle, land contracts. We'll talk about the benefits for the buyer and the seller, and we'll talk about what almost happened in the legislation this year. It died on the last day of the session, but it would have been catastrophic for all of us. I'm also going to hit up a little bit on subject to deals and creative financing, and give you, what my viewpoint is as an attorney when I see problems, right? So we documented all these kind of deals in the past, and we're always listening to clients and seeing what they're doing and what's out in the market. So I'm happy to talk to you about that as well. I'd love to have questions all night. So if you guys have been an active group so far, so please don't be shy. Ask a question. We'll pass the mic around, and I'll give you any information that I possibly can. And we'll even open it up at the end if you need to. Okay? 1347. Let's talk about that for a second. We call it Marcia's bill, because the person who really started it was a lady from a small town in southern Indiana called Bargersville, Indiana. Her name's Marcia Isbell. And Marcia is an investor. She's been investing her whole career. And she's also an appraiser, right? So she's deep in the market and knows what's going on in the market down in Bargersville, which is Johnson County, Indiana, just south of Indianapolis. And Marcia was referred to us because she had like a bee in her bonnet and was ticked that the Bargersville Town Council had passed a new ordinance, and they kind of did it on the sly, kind of didn't give a lot of information about it. And what it did was put utility bills all in the landlord's name. And so they were trying to stop their collection problem with bad tenants and just push that over onto landlords and say, anybody that's an owner of property, you are primarily liable for your tenant utility bills. And this is all utilities, not just water and sewer, which are bad enough by themselves, but think electric and gas, right? So if you're familiar with how your utility companies run, at least in this area and in different parts of the state, what we found is that the utilities are way behind in their collection efforts. So you might get 1, 2, 3 months behind with the utility before they really go to shut somebody off, because they really don't want to shut off anybody's utilities and have a complaint from a consumer that they're without heat, they're without air conditioning, whatnot. And so things really languish in the system. And so Bargersville and many other cities, about 14 or 15 of them that we found, all started altering their laws and writing these ordinances that made landlords responsible. And the whole reason it came up was because 5 years ago, all of the utilities were deregulated. The small town said, we want to be in control of our utility pricing, so let us opt out of the statewide regulation from the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, right? So here's Big Brother, the state of Indiana, watching all the utilities. Suddenly, 5 years ago, they let all the municipalities go. And about 90% of the utility providers in Indiana are these small town utilities. So to make matters worse, what we found out in Barbersville was that everybody on the town council, all 5 members, were also employees of or directors of the utility. So they're right, you're thinking this is not possible, right? They're writing the ordinances for their own benefit, for their employer, crazy, and they do it in this weird way. And so even their town council meetings, they wouldn't give people hardly time to get up and speak. So we only had maybe 5 minutes was our allotted amount of time. That was it on this whole ordinance. And literally, this story is about the power of one person and the unity that comes with it. One person, Marcia Isbell, started this whole thing and got ticked, and she started calling all of her investor buddies in the Johnson County Property Association. And she rallied them, as well as other people in the state came down, and we packed the house of this little Barbersville Town Council. They had to bring in more chairs. It was standing room only the first time we had this meeting. And let me tell you, when we got up and left at the end, their faces went another shade of white, right? They were like, what just happened? All these people were here supporting this bill and supporting Marcia in her objecting to this bill. So we jerked around with it for about 3-4 months and tried to get the town to come around. Well, it turns out that one of the legislators in Indiana is a guy named Woody Burton. And Woody is a realtor. He's one of the only realtors in the state legislature. And he's also an investor. So he's got a dozen properties or whatever of his own. And he's from down there in southern Indiana. So he got wind of what was going on, and Marcia was contacting him, right? So you're getting the pattern. One person raising a stake, calling all her friends, calling for action, calling her legislator, trying to get some help, trying to get some movement. And it worked. Because Woody had the exact same thing happen to him in Greenwood, where he's got some of his properties, and he had to end up paying all this money, and he was ticked because he's like, wait a minute, I'm a representative. You're totally screwing me over and all these other people by making me pay these utility bills for deadbeat tenants. And so he had kind of a little bone to pick, right? So he was very happy to hear from us and from Marcia and said, I'll be the sponsor. I'll be your champion with the legislature to go in and try to change this. And what Woody originally wanted to do was bring all these utilities back under the state control of the IURC. He said, I'm just going to bring them all back in and see how they like that. And as the negotiations went on, and other stakeholders came in, like the Apartment Owners Association and BAGI, the Builders Association, my board, which is a big Metropolitan Board of Realtors for Central Indiana, the Realtors group, statewide Realtors all came in and said, let's maybe not go quite that far. So we started writing the legislation with his assistant and came up with just some ideas on putting the responsibility where it belongs with the tenants, right? And saying, landlords, you are not liable for a tenant's utility bills. And if they skip out, that's on the utility. They're going to have to go collect on it just like anybody else, right? We don't pay for their groceries and gas or their utilities, right? We only are in the landlording business. So Woody got a hold of that, and the way a statute becomes law is it first gets written in October, and then in October they submit it to a committee in December. And in December, they name their 10 bills that can possibly be on their agenda for Woody. He's got possible 10 bills, every legislator up to 10 bills. So he had to winnow down which ones he was really going to fight on, and this was his #1 bill. So in December, they post that all up, and then the legislature only meets for like 2 to 4 months, right? So from January through the end of April is when it was this year. And that's the only time you have to get your law passed. And if you didn't make that first cut in October, you're done. If you don't make the cut in December, you're done until the next year, right? So Marcia was really pleased that it was going the right way. We were really pleased. We were down there working with them. And it goes through then first a small committee. And I was talking to Alicia about that a minute ago. There's a chairman of a committee, and he's not happy about what he's hearing. So we'll get to that at the end on this #5. But first it goes through these committee hearings that are open to the public. And I know Alicia came down to some. Did anybody else come down to the State House and, pound on the table a little bit with us? We had a full house there as well. So people from all over Indiana came down to the State House and went to these committee meetings, and they got to stand up and say their opinion. And mostly it was me and another guy talking, but we could at least point out some different folks that had come down and been taken advantage of, identify them by name, and let the committee see that these are real people, not, billionaires being, taken advantage of, regular investors with 1, 4, 10 properties, that kind of thing. So it was very impactful for those who did come down. If you hear about something legislatively and you get a call to action or whatever, it's really very powerful to just show up, right? Even if you don't say anything, but if you show up, they pay attention. If you don't show up, you have no say, right? So if it's just like voting, if you don't vote, you don't get to have really too much say about what happens. So interestingly, we got it through the committee. We got bipartisan support, Republican and Democrat. We went through the House of Representatives, got voted on. Massive bipartisan support, was overwhelmingly approved, right? So Republicans and Democrats came together. Then it went to the Senate, goes through the same process, a committee meeting. They argue about it. They alter the law a little bit. They make some edits, goes to the full Senate. Bipartisan support in the committee, bipartisan support in the full Senate. And it gets passed. Then we finally get the whole thing done. The governor stamps it. Marcia got to go and have her picture taken with the governor signing like a ceremonial thing, so it's very cool. But that law affects everybody. It affects you here in Northwest Indiana. It affects people in Evansville, Terre Haute, Wilmington, wherever. Every landlord is impacted by this law. And none of us ever have to worry about, unless I tell you something else, none of us have to worry about a municipality forcing us to pay somebody else's utility bill. All because one person stood up and said, I don't think this is right, maybe I can do something about it, and really went forward. I want to say one more thing about this. In Bargersville, they just had their election. Guess what happened to all those people that were on the town council? All of them booted. Every single one got booted. And the cool thing, the super cool thing was, Marcia told me when we were at the governor's office, she said, I was trying to decide who to write my vote in for the last person for the town council. And it was between a woman and some other guy she didn't know. She voted for the woman. That lady won by 1 vote. Get out of here. 1 vote. So Marcia starts the whole thing. It's an avalanche of awesomeness. She gets everybody supported, riled up, gets people down there to Bargersville, gets people to the State House, gets the last person elected. So I'm like, it's the coolest story I've ever, been involved in. And one person makes a huge difference. So don't anybody think you can't make a difference. You do. You're super important. Show up at this stuff and go forward. Number 5, let me look ahead to what's happening right now. And maybe you guys are getting some blowback here. But what we're hearing from a number of municipalities around the state is they're trying to get out of this statute and they're just not enforcing it. And they're trying to still hold landlords liable. And it's completely wrong. It's very clear in the statute who's responsible, that the owner is not liable for it. But these municipalities are counting on that there's maybe not going to be another Marcia out there to stand up and try to stop it. And it's made its way back up to Woody, right? So now Woody Burton, here he is. He got kind of screwed over by the city of Greenwood. He was mad. He was mad the first time when we went through this. And he said, look, Jeff, I tried to play nice the first time. I'm hearing what's going on, and I'm already writing letters to these municipalities, and I'm telling them, don't mess with this, because you're not going to like what we do to you next year in the legislature. So if you're getting a bad result in your municipality, if you're having something go wrong, please tell us, because Woody wants to know which cities and towns are not obeying this ordinance, so that it was very powerful when we were explaining that to him the first time. And we had all these towns and their ordinances written up, and we would just hand it to him, and he could go through them, and these different committee members were getting upset that their towns were taking advantage of people that they represented from all over the state. So it's very important for us to get positive information, data about who is not obeying the statute, right? Because I know it's not happening. So please, please, please know that you're important, know that you can make a difference, you know, if you've got a municipality that's not following the law, definitely let us know. We'd love to hear about it. Talk to your president or give us a call or email or whatever. So that is House Bill 1347. That's Marcia's bill. I'm really happy about how it worked out, and all the people that came forward, you made a huge difference, a huge difference. Any questions on that so far? I'm going to go forward here. Yes, ma'am.
When did that take effect?
Great question. It took effect as soon as the governor signed it, which I want to say is like May or June. Most bills become effective in July 1st, but this bill, they wrote in a provision that made it effective immediately because they were so mad about it. So it was May or June. Thanks. What was the date again? April 25th. So all the way back to when it was voted on by the Senate and signed.
Anything prior to that is technically still a tenant, because that was the law at the time.
Before that, it was whoever signed up, and every city around the state was doing things differently. So many cities were following the obvious rule that if a tenant is occupying a property, they ought to be the one liable for it. But they started hearing from each other. They talked to one another just like we investors talk to each other, hearing, hey, here's a great way to collect on your unpaid utility bills. One of the towns even made it retroactive to like the 80s, and they were going back to all these different prior owners and trying to collect on them. So it's just, I mean, it's crazy. So yeah, retroactive, effective April 25th. Yes, sir.
So sewer, wastewater, and trash, for instance, imported?
Trash, I'm not sure. Sewer, water, electric, gas, yes.
Right, it's a monopoly in imported. They force you to use their trash service.
Please email me so we can have Woody update that into the ordinance to make sure that that's, I'm not sure I would call trash utility, but we'll make sure that it gets, you know, when it's pulled in like that, that's important. I'm going for the water. Other questions on the bill? Anybody else have experience on it, that they're having a positive or negative? Yeah, ma'am.
Procedurally, what do? Tenant vacates, and then you just send them a registered letter showing them the breakdown of what they owe, and then what?
Well, the utility should be in their name automatically at this point. So that would be up to the utility company to go after them as the tenant and try to collect from them. As an owner, all you need to do is say, put the utilities back in my name because it's no longer occupied by a tenant, even if it's for a few days, a week, or whatever, until you get a new tenant. And then the new tenant flips. The law requires you to put it in your real estate lease, your contract. So most of your leases say who pays the utilities. If it doesn't, be sure to add that. And then also, they've got to give notice to the utility company, so have them take that in writing and show that they are supposed to be liable for it. Otherwise, they'll just slip through the cracks because they don't know. Yeah. Good. Any other questions on that? Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Let's talk about land contracts for a minute. And I'm going to talk about them because of really point number 4 here. This was a sleeper that caught us very by surprise in the legislature. Every year, there's hundreds of bills, right? So every legislator can put in up to 10 bills. So you've got all these representatives, all these senators, like 1,000 different bills get put up. And you know, we can't follow all of them. There's enough full-time jobs just to try to get this pushed through. But about halfway through, we learned about a land contract bill. I think it's 1495, I'm guessing. I think it was House Bill 1495. And what it turned out was House Bill 1495 was almost 23 pages long. 1347, the one we did, was just a couple pages of new legislation. 23 pages long was 1495, dealing with land contracts. And what the law basically did was try to make a land contract into a pure either residential sale and combine it with normal financing type of requirements. For example, you have to have an appraisal, and the appraisal has to be equal to or greater than the value of the land contract. And we all know that many times when a buyer comes into a land contract scenario, they're buying it because they want to put sweat equity into it, they want to fix it up, they want to, right? And so an appraisal might be on a property that needs a lot of rehab, like the one that was shown on the screen a little bit ago. That could have been a land contract buyer that did all that work, and it would have never appraised, correct? So appraisal, that was the first thing they required. Then they wanted you to provide also title information, a full title report saying what all the liens and debts were on the property. Most of the time, land contract sellers already have a mortgage on the property, and you can write your land contract to acknowledge that, but you don't have to disclose the full amount, the payoffs, and this and that. So the new deal was like you were buying a house and you got a title commitment on the amount of the on the property. And you didn't have to convey title or give insurance, but you did have to give a full title report, which is also cost money. And guess who had to pay for that? Seller. Guess who had to pay for the appraisal? Seller, right? So the first two things are more expenses for us and more disclosures and higher hoops to jump through just to sell your property. Another thing that was in there that was kind of interesting was an inspection, right? So you had to give a full inspection, just like if they were buying the house on a regular, FHA loan or whatever. So as crazy as that is, that's what they were requiring. And the thought behind it was, well, buyers don't always know what they're getting into. They're not sophisticated. Therefore, we're just going to force a seller, again, to provide an inspection and then go through it. And then who knows what the negotiation is going to be back and forth. Again, land contract properties are often ones where it's sweat equity or the buyer's going to make improvements and that kind of a thing. And an inspection is really not an appropriate deal. Most land contracts we write are as is, where is, right? We define it as is, where is. We're making no representations whatsoever about the condition of this property, what's wrong with it, what's good or bad. You can inspect it all day long if you want to. You can hire your own inspector. But don't make me do it, and don't make me pay for it. And if you like the property, buy it. If you don't buy it, right? So they were having this inspection problem. All extra cost for us. The one that made my head blow off was this new one about foreclosing. So many of you know that if you have a land contract, it's sort of a hybrid between a rental agreement and a purchase, right? And that if the buyer has a low amount of equity in the property, a low down payment, etc., then you can kind of evict them like with a forfeiture, a strict forfeiture of the property without going through the entire foreclosure process, which is more expensive, takes longer, right? And you have to put the house up through a sheriff's sale and everything. But the law for like 50, 60 years has been about 20% is the rule of thumb. If a buyer has about 20% equity in the property through their payments and whatnot, then you have to foreclose. If it's lower than 20%, you basically can have a forfeiture and kick them out in a much quicker fashion. This new law made that 5%. 5%. So many of us are getting 5-10% down payment on a land contract, so that would automatically put you into the foreclosure process. And this is appropriate. They were thinking, well, it's just like a bank, right? You're seller financing. That's like bank financing. Well, we know that you all are investing your real money, not a bank investing treasury bill money or other money they're getting from the Fed. So it's not apples to apples whatsoever, and it would have been, I think, a disaster for the land contract market. We talked to people in Ohio that were planning, their client was planning on doing 200 land contracts in Indiana, and they said if that law passes, we will not come to Indiana because it's too crazy, which I agree. I thought this would be nuts. And it made it through the House, it made it through the Senate, it made it through all the committees, just like our bill, and then it stalled. And we couldn't understand why it stalled, but we were contacting Woody, because Woody was on that bill as well, and other legislators saying, you've got to stop this thing. It's crazy. It's going to be a disaster for the housing market. Do not do it. Do not. And for whatever reason, by the grace of God, it went into a committee after both the House and Senate had voted on it. It would have normally gone straight to the governor, but they sent it back to a committee of both houses, House and Senate, to review. And who knows what was going on in that back room. But the bottom line was that committee killed it on the last day of the legislative session. I have no idea why. I'd love to take credit for it. I can't. But it's like they killed that bill at the last second, and it would have been a disaster for us. So I want to talk about land contracts tonight because you need to know next year this is coming back, just like the utility issues coming back. These things never die. They just keep coming back in different ways. You got to keep fighting on them. So if you've done land contracts in the past, be aware that you may have some new requirements. And we had already started redrafting new land contracts to be ready as soon as the governor signed it and say, here's your new template that you might want to use on the land contract deal because all your old ones are illegal, starting would have been July 1st, to your question. So we expect this land contract legislation to come all the way back around, and we're going to try to get in front of it a lot earlier this year since we know what's happening with it, and try to shape that as best we can. So be aware land contracts are up for grabs. That's number 4. I do want to give there's a few people that have done land contracts. A land contract is basically seller financing. So if you own a property, you can sell it to a buyer, and you're sort of the bank. They call it your own bank. And if you've got a mortgage on it, that's fine, but you just have a new buyer, they give a down payment of whatever amount you agree to, and they have an interest rate just like a bank loan at whatever rate you agree to. If they've got great credit, you're going to have a lower interest rate, right? If they have terrible credit, you're going to have a higher interest rate. A lot of times land contracts are bridges for people to go between, hey, I want to buy this house, but I can't get my financing with the bank quite yet, but I want to lock it down. So you buy it on land contract for a short term, maybe 1 to 3 years. Other buyers are long term. This is like where they're going to live. This is their permanent residence. And they do like 15 and 30, 20-year deals. So we've written everything in between 1 year up to 30 years. And some investors want to just have that long-term income stream. We're working with a guy right now. He's like, I'm thinking about a rental house, but my HOA doesn't want to let me turn it into a rental. I said, make it a land contract. Then you'll get exactly what you want, that income stream, long-term, as long as you want, and you get fewer tenant hassles. So with a land contract, one of the big differences is that you are transferring ownership, some ownership to the buyer. That's good for you as a seller because you don't have to worry about the taxes, insurance, or maintenance anymore. You're not managing that property. All you're doing is financing it on your side. The buyer owns the property. They have a recorded instrument, which is your land contract. Gets recorded just like a deed. So they are really, truly owners, but their ownership is not complete, right? It's a partial ownership until they pay off the contract. The deed is still in your name as the seller. So you don't transfer title. You don't give title insurance. You don't have an insured closing. So it's very quick, very easy. You can qualify your own buyers in any way you want. If you like them, give them a good deal. If it's tough, you make a harder deal, right? So sellers have lots of flexibility with this. And I always use a teeter-totter example. Like when you first buy it as a land contract, it's like a teeter-totter down here. You do have ownership, but it's just barely. And as you make payments on that, it comes more and more and more until you pay the thing off in 1 year or 20 years, whatever it is. And then you've got full ownership. On that day, you get a new deed to the property. You get an insured closing. Your seller has to deliver it to you free and clear of all encumbrances, so they've got to pay off their mortgage in advance, right, of that closing. So a lot of moving parts there, but it gets a seller into a great position because they are now sort of out of ownership, out of management, out of all those responsibilities. And if you're an investor that likes that, that's great for you. That's perfect, right? Plus you can get whatever interest rate you want, and you get a down payment, right, from somebody, often 10%, very standard, 10% down. If you get a nice down payment like that and the buyer defaults, what do? Resell it on land contract again. So you've kept all those payments, kept that down payment that came in, and you just recycle and repeat the same property. Okay? So it can be a very beneficial deal as a seller to use a land contract. It's also very beneficial for a buyer because what? They can't get financing. The only reason they're coming to you is they're tapped out, they've got bad credit, bad meaning they can't get bank financing, right? They may have good credit in other ways, but their financing is not bankable. So they get you to finance a property. They want to get into ownership. They don't want to rent anymore. So they get the pride of ownership. They get to make improvements to the property. It's theirs, right? And then they get to pay it off whenever they want. And they can always pay off early. So don't think that it's just like a bank loan. You're, as a bank financing, you can have that buyer pay it off early, or they can go the whole term, whichever way they want it. So set it up however you want at the beginning, and you can have these long-term deals, short-term, whatever you want. Small down payment, big down payment. And it's a very flexible, very quick, very easy type of document to do. You do it all the time. Yep. No, you started for it. Yes, sir.
But if the price of rent goes up, there's nothing you can do about that then, right?
Right, so the question is, what if I would have had increasing rents? Correct, you've locked yourself into a sale price and you've locked yourself into a normal rate of return. So you can't adjust anything that way. If you get the property back because they default and the property's gone up, you could renegotiate that. Some investors, deals we've done, we've staggered those payments because the buyer might have trouble at the beginning, and so we have escalations in there, kind of like an adjustable rate mortgage. You can stagger it that way and have some bumps in your payment if they agree in advance, but you got to know up front.
Yeah, because I'm just to get away from the HOA fees doing the land contract.
Yeah.
If they do end up staying in there for a multiple amount of years and the rent is a couple $100 higher from the first time they went in there, nothing you can do unless you put it in the contract right after that.
Yeah, true. And so I would never, when you get away from the term rent, right, because you've sold it, you're out of it as a landlord, all you should be thinking is my payment hitting my bank account on the first of the month or not? That's all you really need to worry about. And you have to set that deal up front that you're happy with. If you don't like giving up that possible upside or possible downside, right, the market's gone both ways. So you gotta pick your poison and decide which way you want to go with it. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Can you assign that land contract, or would you suggest more being subject to and be able to assign that, or they're both the same thing, or is it just different language?
Subject 2 is coming up next. Perfect. But yes, to answer your question, a land contract is assignable. You're going to have to transfer the deed to whoever the new owner is as well. The buyer, we always write it that only the seller can assign it, not the buyer, because we don't want to take a risk on a new buyer. But that land contract is just like any other note or mortgage paper that you've got, and you can definitely transfer that and cash out earlier if you want to, so long as you don't harm the buyer, right? As long as the buyer gets what they bargained for, you can do whatever you want on your side. So definitely you can. So that's a good way to raise your cash. That might help you on your side of it. Just saying, you want to season that for a year or so, just like any other note, and make it look good and make sure that they're paying on time. And you can cash out very nicely on a land contract that way. Definitely. Great idea. Thanks for bringing that up. Other land contract ideas and questions? Kind of getting the idea, seller financing. Yes, sir.
So if they default at whatever time, is there any recapture money that has to go back to them?
Only if it's over the 20%, right? If they're over 20%, then you've got to foreclose on them, send it to foreclosure sale. If there's a surplus, the buyer would get that surplus, yes. If it's a deficiency and they, there's no surplus there, then they wouldn't get anything. Okay? Does that help you? Yeah. If they're under the 20%, rule of thumb, no. Most land contract buyers help hypothetical hint, it's kind of like a tenant. Most land contract buyers cannot afford legal counsel. If they're defaulting on their home, their next stop is probably not a law firm to give a retainer to fight on their land contract. So it's highly likely that the seller is, more in the driver's position than the buyer on that at that point. We're actually representing a buyer in a land contract deal right now that where there is a surplus, and we're fighting hard on it because he wants to, realize that benefit, and he's put quite a bit into it, over 20% for sure, way over 20%. That's a complicated fact pattern, but they can get the surplus if the circumstances are right. Okay.
Just out of curiosity, how hard is it for them to get the surplus back? They're going to apply for?
Yeah, difficult. They got to go through the whole court process and collect on it, and it's got to hit the foreclosure, it's got to hit the sheriff's sale. There's got to be a buyer that paid more, right? And as the seller, you're going to bid your contract amount, whatever that was. So just like a bank bids at a regular foreclosure sale. So it's rare. In reality, it's very rare. In legal principle, it can absolutely happen. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Is it based on the sales price that you agreed on, or the appraisal price at the end of foreclosure?
If you foreclose, if there's a foreclosure, the price that controls is the land contract price and the payoff on that day. So if they've been paying a little bit, and here's where they're at, and there's foreclosure, then you look at the payoff amount that day and interest that accrues, costs that accrue, right? You add those on top and then go to the sheriff's sale. That's the number that you have to be above as a buyer to get anything, right? Does that help? Yeah. Okay. Other land contract questions? Great strategy. It's a great way to acquire properties.
I had a situation where I was purchasing a property under land contract. I didn't know it was land contract until title work and then somebody else appeared and showed up. But what was scary was the person that I was buying the property from was in arrearage. So you didn't know, there's no paperwork there showing what's in arrearage. So my thing was the price that the seller gave me. I was scared that it wasn't going to be a deal. So you don't know. Those guys are at odds because he hasn't paid this guy whoever knows how long. But he does have a right to sell the property. So the guy that was holding the land contract was trying to rush to his attorney to get it stopped foreclosed, but he couldn't. They couldn't do it. So we ended up coming up with a really good number as far as for closing. So we had a final number, but that was kind of we had no way of knowing what that number was going to be. So that's, to me, that was a scary part of the land contract.
It is scary, definitely scary, because you don't have an insured closing. All you might get title work. If you're a buyer, a land contract buyer, you should always get title work done, right? Sort of like the statute that they're trying to get, but that's for you as a buyer. That's your protection. Go protect yourself and be smart. Get a title work, find out what the mortgages are, find out if there's any other land contracts recorded. Now, not everybody records their land contract. In your case, did they have it recorded? Right.
Just the purchase, just that purchase price, of course. So you don't know any. It was a higher number way higher than what we agreed upon with the seller. So he got the number right. I was surprised. He definitely got it right.
Good. So in your case, they did record the first land contract. That's the way I always recommend people to do. Everybody does what they want, but you do have to be careful. And in a land contract, that ought to have a representation that says there's no other land contracts in place right now. And you look at it and say, right? Before you sign that, and make sure that there's nothing else out there. So very, a little bit tricky situation where you be a little bit careful. Sort of like if they had a mortgage on it, you'd want to know how much it was and if they were current. So you might demand a payoff letter before you went to closing as a buyer to make certain that they were making their payments. Not everybody makes their payments. Right on? Okay? Good stuff, yeah.
Kind of a follow-up on his question
Yeah.
about the HOAs. So if the seller, would the seller still be responsible for HOAs typically?
Yeah, interesting. In the contract between the buyer and the seller, you would make the buyer liable, right? But since there's a deeded ownership, you're still in this, a little bit of this gray area, and the HOA is going to come against both for sure. So make certain that there's provision in the contract that they pay the HOA fees, and there's a good system for getting that done. And you're keeping track of it as a seller and a buyer. Okay? Same thing with taxes, right? You write that the buyer's going to pay the taxes, but you better keep track of it, otherwise you get stuck. Sometimes innocently by an unsophisticated buyer, sometimes on purpose from a buyer that doesn't take care of things. Okay?
Just like ballpark in general, what should you expect to like come up with cash-wise to set up a land contract sale with an attorney?
Yeah.
If I came to you, I was like, hey, I have this property, I need to sell a land contract, ballpark range?
$750 to $2,000. Probably $1,000, really where you're headed, and a lot of it depends on the sophistication of the parties. And if I have to kind of keep redrafting, that's when the time keeps going in a circle, and I'm like, why didn't you get this right the first time? So I'll give you a term sheet, and if it's the term sheet that we got there, it's going to be a lot lower price. If it's, you're still negotiating back and forth, and you keep altering it and this and that, then that's when things get a little bit out of hand.
Right.
Yeah. Figure $1,000. Yes, ma'am.
Jeff, excuse me, sometimes we can't hear the question in front of the room.
Ballpark the price of the land contract to hire us to do it. I said $750 to $2,500, depending mostly on how much back and forth there is. That's really the key issue. Yeah. And this other question was about homeowners associations. Did you hear that? Who's liable for it? It's just like the taxes. It's a little bit goofy, but write it into your contract and then pay attention to it, no matter what side of the deal you're on. Yes, sir.
So if you're doing this land contract just to get away from the HOA fees, if they do end up staying in there, how can the seller back out? Is there any way a seller can back out of that? Like if I'm only doing it just to get around HOA fees and I just want it as rental?
Yeah. So that's kind of my next thing.
Okay.
On this creative stuff, there's really no right or wrong way to do a deal. There's always just the right deal for the people at the time and the property and whatnot. And I really just try to counsel people, just be straight and do whatever you're doing. If you really want it to be a rental, make it a lease, right? If you can't do it under that HOA, then you got a problem, right? Find something else. But don't call it a land contract and treat it like a lease, because somewhere that's going to come back to bite you. Karma is not nice, and it's going to go bad sometime.
Well, with land contracts, can we just, like, if the house is worth $100,000, we can put it as a $200,000 house with an interest rate on it? Where if they end up...
You could if you had a buyer that was...
Yeah, that crazy.
Yeah. And, I know there's always deals where people have sort of an agreement that, hey, I know I'm selling you this on land contract, but it's really more like a rent, and I'm going to let you out of it sometime in a couple of years. We even wrote one for a client that he didn't want a land contract because he didn't want any ownership to go to the other side. So we wrote a lease option that looked as much like a land contract as I could possibly make it, but we called it a lease, and I said, I don't know if it's going to work, and if he ever hires a lawyer to try to undo it, be ready to say your honor, because it may not work out. Now that deal's 5 years in, it's been perfect, both sides have been happy with it, and everybody knew what they were getting into and were, happy to deal with it that way. But I gave lots of warnings to both sides, and they had the buyer had legal counsel too. Does that help? Yep. Yes,
What
sir.
percent of land contracts would you say fail?
I'm sorry?
What percentage of land contracts would you say fail from the buyers falling through and have repossessing it?
Yeah, I see the ones that do fail.
Right.
So it's really hard for me to, but I think it's a fairly small percentage. Just like bank loans, I'd say it's higher than bank loan failures because the credit of the buyer is less.
10%?
Maybe, yeah, maybe 10%. I have one client who's done over 1,000. She's had 3 defaults in like 10 years. I find that stunning. Yeah, it's really good result. Yeah.
You actually were asking about taxes before, when so if you bought something and then sold it on land contract within a year, I mean, when is it technically sold? Is it, that be in that short-term window, or is it long-term gains with it?
The question is, when are the taxes due on it? So with a land contract, it's an installment contract, and it's taxed on installment sale rules. Any part that was under 1 year would be ordinary income. Anything after that is you pay ordinary income tax on the interest rate and long-term capital gains at that point on the principal that you receive. So a strategy might be to have interest-only payments, right? So you can play a little bit of games with it if you want to, but that's how that normally goes down. Okay, great question. Yeah, how do the taxes roll? That's section 453 of the Internal Revenue Code for those who are keeping track at home. That's super nerdy. Okay?
So you could do it on interest only then, land contract?
Yeah. Is that wild?
Yeah.
So there's even a thing, I'm gonna go up. So if you had a property that you were selling and you were thinking about doing a 1031 exchange and deferring your capital gains tax on it, there is a way to use an installment sale to defer that for 30 years, have interest-only payments, and there are only a couple of private lenders in the whole country that will loan against that installment contract, kind of like your idea of selling it off, and they will match up so that it's a wash and put a intermediary in the middle, so you can get all your cash out and defer the tax for 30 years and roll on down the road. Super sophisticated, super sweet, great idea. So we've done a couple of those for people.
What's the cost on setting something like that up?
It's
It sounds nice, but
it is. No cost or obligation.
Yeah.
However, the lending fees, like you get like 93.5% out of it. So you're burning 6.5% for the loan fees, the tax work, the accounting work, and they reserve some money to make sure there's the first few payments, there's cash to be there and stuff like that. Right. But no cost up front or anything like that. Yeah, great, 500,000 minimum. Okay. Other questions on that? Okay. Let's talk about the next item up for bids, subject to and creative deals. So I know the market is hot because I keep getting calls about subject to transactions. And subject to means that you are a buyer, like an investor. You don't want to get a loan. You want to use other people's money. So you buy a house that already has a loan on it, and you buy it subject to that existing loan. So say the house is $150,000, it's got a $100,000 loan on it. You say, I'll take the house subject to that $100,000 loan. I'll give you $50,000 up front, and you'll walk away. The seller gives a deed to the property at that time that doesn't pay off the mortgage. Now, in my example, I put a lot of cash in for the buyer, but oftentimes these are deals where there's almost no equity in the property. In fact, it's a distressed seller, highly distressed seller that wants to just give me a little bit of money and I'll get out of town. I'm moving to Florida, I'm moving to California, I just need to get out of this property. I don't want to pay the mortgage anymore, but as an investor, you know that there's maybe some upside in it. You can rent it for a profit. You can sell it on the contract for a profit. You could rehab it and flip it for a profit. So you see that there's some money in there, but maybe not that much. So you buy subject to. And these deals are 100% legitimate, 100% legal. But what I see as a lawyer, coming back to one of the questions a minute ago, is I see the ones that go bad mostly. We've got several clients that we've spent a lot of time creating a subject to package for them exactly the way they want to do it and close their deals for them. And I'm 100% confident in those people are honest. They're doing exactly things the way they're supposed to. They have the ability to close. They have the ability to perform the subject to contract and rehab and do all that stuff. What I have seen, though, in this creative environment is people doing subject to deals when they really can't perform. And so they get a deed to the property, they never make the mortgage payments, they don't flip it, they don't put a renter in there, it all just goes back. And eventually that litigation comes around where there's foreclosure and the former owner is saying, why did I get stuck with this property? Why am I in debt on it when I gave it to you as the buyer? Right? I sold this off to you, I'm out. Right? You might have even, the buyer might have even given cash for keys, that kind of a thing. A couple grand to walk. And so they thought they were completely out of it. Their mind was under duress, under stress, and they just wanted out of their property. So the subject to deals, I think, can be a trap for all of us because we think that there's an opportunity to get a hold of a house, and you want to just be very careful. That's my, sort of 10 cents worth of free advice or whatever. You want to be very careful with subject to, that you don't get in a position where you have to stand up and say, Your Honor, and they say, wait a minute, you have the deed to this property, you didn't make any payments on the mortgage, you didn't pay the taxes, you didn't pay the insurance, you didn't pay the HOA dues, but you're trying to, get ownership of this property and get that little extra, maybe they did sell at the sheriff's sale and there was a little bit of equity there. Wait a minute, that doesn't seem right. So you have to be very careful with these subject twos. They are out there, they are perfectly legal, of course, but do it the right way and document it the right way, give full disclosure, and it's kind of a last resort for a seller that's really desperate to get out of a property. A lot of benefits to your buyer. Seller's benefits are they get out of it. Lots of traps for the unwary. Just want to mention that as a final thing, I think. Any questions on subject to? Is anybody doing a lot of subject to deals up here? Yes. Yep. So if I can tell by your questions, you know what you're doing, and you're an honest businessman. I can tell in 5 seconds when I'm dealing with somebody that's like, I think I don't want that person as a client. So it's very nice to have you in the room asking very good questions. Okay? Subject to can be fantastic. Just be careful. That's my caveat. Be careful. Questions? Other questions? Yep.
Do you suggest for someone who wants to kind of pass it on to another buyer to buy it on subject to and sell it on a wrap?
Is there enough room in it? That's what I'm thinking.
Well,
if the numbers make sense, I think it's okay as long as everybody has full disclosure. That's my number one thing, is everybody needs to know what deal they signed up for. And if you signed up for that deal, it should be the one that is actually taking place, not a hidden, it's not really a lease option, it's really a land contract. Those things back and forth, I think, get me scared because I've had judges say, I don't think this is a lease option, I think this is a land contract. I want to send it downtown to, Superior Court. And even though it was a nice set of documents created by a guru somewhere, the judges, if they look at it, these guys are elected, these men and women are elected, and they are accountable to their constituents, and they want to look out for the little guy who might be taken advantage of. So if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it better be a duck. That's my only thought about any of it. But yeah, wrap it, do it, it's good.
I think a little protection is for me is to tell the original seller that I don't make any payments for 3 months, which gives you enough time to get your buyer 10 or whoever you're going to get your back in. That kind of protects you and the sellers.
Who's covering those payments? How are you covering that 3 months of payment?
Well, the seller's still going to cover payments, but that's in the contract.
Got it.
So he knows, hey, these 3 months is the wash. He's just happy to get it off his hands. That 3 months should be enough time for you to do whatever. And if you can, you should be able to back out of it.
Right. Give it right back to him. Right. Yep. Yes. So you're escrowing that 3 months. Yep. Nice. All above board. That's perfect. I love escrow. Other questions on subject to? I'm not trying to give you a hard time about that land contract lease option. It's a good argument. It's like an argument I go back and forth with my clients on. really doing? What are you really doing here? Okay. Let me flip ahead. As I told you at the beginning, we got it on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, right? That's where all the videos are. So we'd love to connect with you so that you get things and you can see what's happening all the time. And if you have questions, you can always hit us on Facebook or LinkedIn, whatever, and ask us questions, and we try to respond to them. I'll be honest, I don't look at those until our marketing manager looks at it every day, constantly, all platforms, and hits me with emails whenever we have questions and says, Jeff, how do we want to respond to this? And we get a response out right away. So I try to be as careful as I can. But you never know. I have got to be a little bit cautious about legal advice on Facebook. So sometimes it's kind of general, right? So just understand that. But that's all of our stuff. I think that's everything. Oh, 3 months ago, we had opened the office in Florida. That's the last thing I want to tell you. So we've got office in Indy, Carmel, and we also are down in Florida. My parents live in Fort Myers, and I've been going down there since I was a baby, taking care of mom and dad, all their illnesses and whatnot, and they keep recovering and being healthy, but we keep going down. And we got a few clients in Naples that said, come down and open an office. So we took them up on it. And just a couple months ago, we opened an office in Naples. And surprisingly, I've done 3 deals with the Florida guys that have property back in Indiana. So don't think that there's not deals going both ways. All the snowbirds go down in the winter and vice versa. They have property back here that they're still invested in. So if you've got property that you want to pitch down in Florida, for sure let me know. I'd love to do it. I've had farmland and some dog and gun knife neighborhood house that I got rid of for a guy. Couldn't believe anybody wanted it, but it worked out perfect for a notes buyer. It was kind of a notes guy. Bought it, and then he put more money in, doubled down with the guy who was the buyer, and they went into a bigger project together. So it was just a fantastic outcome for everybody, even on a property that you might have thought was, but that I definitely thought was a little bit risky.
Any other states besides Indiana, Florida you deal with?
We're doing some litigation in Illinois right now with co-counsel, but we welcome any place in the country, and we just co-counsel with other people. That's how we do it. And it's pretty, one of our lawyers is a Georgia lawyer, and I've encouraged her to re-up her license because she's super brilliant, and just let it go for no other reason. She moved to Indianapolis with her husband, and he's with the symphony, and they thought they were just going to stay in Indy forever, and just kind of let it go. I'm like, well, listen, please go get your license back in Georgia. We'd love to have you doing some deals down there.
That was a little off topic. I know you had blogged before about Indiana Series LLCs.
Yep.
Can you update the group here as to what your thoughts still are on that?
Yeah, they make me nervous because I haven't found the right scenario where it really works, because once you have to pay the fees anyway, and you got to redo all the documents anyway, that I feel like you might as well just have a regular straight up LLC. Unless you're an investor that is maybe doing literally a series of deals that you have a format you like to use, but you bring in other investors on something. And so this project is with these 3 investors, and the next one's going to be the next 3. And it's kind of a cookie cutter deal, but you want to be in control, you're in every one of those entities. I'd say, yeah. But if it's just you as a single member, you and your spouse doing multiple.
Right, not talking about like single rental properties.
Yeah,
if you had 40 some rental properties, it wouldn't make sense. 40 separate LLCs.
You're doing all the same work. So I don't think it does any good. And then it raises that, to me, it also raises a little bit of that flag of, well, it's in a series. What has he really got? Oh, there's big money here, right? So that kind of a thing. So I like to silo it off. That's just my opinion. I know it's done. It's a great, I thought it was going to be fantastic, but every time I looked at it for a client, we just scratched our head and we were like, that doesn't really give us much.
So with that being said, what are the drawbacks of having like a Wyoming LLC being in control of an Indiana LLC? I hear all the positives, but I don't ever hear anything negative.
So to me, the negatives of all the bells and whistles out there are that people don't really manage things the way they're supposed to anyway. And the most important thing you can do with your LLC is run it correctly. That's going to give you liability protection. Indiana's got great liability protection for an LLC, and it's 100% private. When you go on the Secretary of State's website and input all your information, when we do it for people, I never put in the principal's information, ever. It's on there as a field because they're trying to test you to see if you'll put it in so they can get the information, but it's not required by law. So I always put myself as registered agent. I use some crazy name like, whatever it is, or the address of the property. There's zero connection between the ownership. So these Wyoming, Nevada, Delaware, and all that, I've done some for other people. We just did an estate plan for a guy who was all over the country, and he wanted it. I argued with him but he's like, no, I want it. I've got to have a Delaware LLC. I'm like, okay, good, we'll do it. But it's just, I think the most important thing is to run it correctly, observe the corporate formalities, and you'll be fine. If you don't do the corporate formalities in your Wyoming, Nevada, or any place else, it ain't going to matter. All of it comes down to whether you're running the company right. And if it's one person, it doesn't matter, or 20 people. The courts are not looking at that entity saying, well, it's really not a true LLC if there's only one member. That's 100% wrong. So I like simple. I like to keep it simple. The easier it is, the more likely it's going to succeed that's the way I see it. The more complicated ways you have to stand on one foot, and I've got an LLC inside of a land trust, inside of a this, inside of a that. It's like, are you really following all of those documents? And guess what? They can be docketed with the court anyway. If you're in litigation, they're going to docket that operating agreement for an LLC. They're going to docket your trust. They're going to docket every single thing. So all your perceived smoke and mirrors is not going to be there, right? So I'd say just run it straight, keep minutes, keep your bank account separate, run it right, and members of these groups usually are doing things pretty well. So that's my rant. Others? I don't want to take up any more time yet. Yeah. Any other questions? Oddball questions? Anything you want to ask about? Anything? Been married for 18 years. We have 5 kids, 20 to 40, 1 granddaughter.
Hi. Thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah.
My name is Craig, and I just am curious as a new investor, what are some pitfalls, maybe commonalities that you see in other investors that maybe I could be aware of?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for coming. Glad you're here tonight. Number one, I would say get advice at the beginning and make sure that you follow it, right? So what I see, the biggest ache in my heart is when a new investor comes to me and they want to know how to do something, and we give them some good guidance, and they think, oh, I heard on TV or I got this other information, I want to do it this other way, right? Most of it is simple. Just all the documents are really straightforward in most scenarios. Just document things correctly, keep records correctly, and follow good advice, right? And I've heard Jonathan Peterson's name thrown around. You were mentioning him. He's a great lawyer up here as well, so you can't go wrong if you were talking to him. I'm kind of a fan of using realtors. I don't know if everybody in here is a realtor or not, but I'm in favor of using licensed realtors for transactions to help you find things and help you write it up. They have seen a lot of deals and things that have gone good and bad, and you can save yourself a lot of time and energy if you ask an experienced realtor about even a market. What's the right market value? The gentleman that did the rehab, that was a $200,000 rehab, right? He was deep in the market on what that property is worth. He understood that market very well. You might not have realized that value. You could have gotten taken advantage of. Are we on? Yeah. You could have gotten taken advantage of as a new person if you didn't have that good market knowledge. So get market knowledge, educate yourself constantly, work with good people, good, honest people. Yeah.
I have a question. You're talking creative, so this is as opposed to if a person if a person has a renter or a person leasing, then a property manager normally takes care of everything. But something like land contracts, et cetera.
Yeah.
I guess I'm trying to see the difference between other property managers and an attorney, or sometimes they have land trust.
Yeah, so the question is about who's kind of managing the deal on a land contract.
Let's say this person is a company that really wants to do 20 land contracts this year.
Yes.
And he doesn't want to manage them at all because he knows he's not going to keep up with it.
So land contracts can be done the same way as property management. So you can hire a property manager. You can also hire a little servicing company to manage all the payments and give you a report every month. It's a very simple, you hit me with an email, I'll give you a servicing company. I mean, it's like $30 a month or something. It's ridiculous. Way less than what you do. But as a land contract seller, if you were doing 20 deals, you definitely want to be keeping track of your own, a little bit of your own, making sure the taxes are getting done, being attentive to it. It's kind of coming back to, your question of how do I not make a mistake? Pay attention, right? Don't be like me that bought his first burnout and didn't know that it was a burnout. I just drove by the house, didn't inspect it. I just thought, oh, this is going to be great. Do your due diligence. Go into the property, touch it, feel it, right? Make sure it's what you think you're buying. Yeah, and pay attention. Don't turn over everything to somebody else. I've seen too many trusting partners. You want to be careful, even with a close friend, that you're double checking what is happening, that the money is going where it's supposed to, the bills are being paid the way they're supposed to, that kind of thing. You can't take out totally hands-free, right? You got to really pay attention. But there are companies that do servicing. Yep. Yeah, good. Great question.
So I didn't get my feet wet before I started looking at houses. I just jumped both feet in.
Good man.
Yeah. So I didn't know anything about LLCs and stuff like that. So I just went on the website and filed. Well, I started paying for everything with material-wise, everything for my LLC through my personal bank account and all my personal credit cards. Now,
so don't do that.
Yeah. So
he did. Don't do that.
I just found this out that you're not supposed to do that. So my question to you is: should I just? I obviously stopped now, but as of like last week. But
5 minutes ago.
Start over? Should I just start over?
No, I just try to correct it. Okay. I just realized there's a little bit of risk out there for our prior, accidents, and just get it straightened out. I don't think I would try to get rid of the old LLC and reform it and all that, but I would get an operating agreement, write some minutes and that kind of thing. We can help you out on that if you need it. But yeah, just get the ship turned around correctly. I don't think the police are coming for you or anything like that.
Okay.
Really good.
Just to help him out, how much will that cost?
How many have you got? How many problems do you have? Very reasonable.
Okay.
My rate's $3.25 an hour, but my associates are $1.75, and I just push everything to them. So it depends how many problems you got, how long it's going to take to fix it. But it should be reasonable.
More of a follow-up question. I'm trying to think of an exact way to phrase this, but I am a business owner and also, trying to get into the real estate investing side of things. From a legal standpoint, again, maybe what are some things that I need to be aware of that I might not think about between like business, mixing business, my own personal business, and also trying to flip houses and maybe get rental or something like that.
Yeah, so your personal business that you have, I would just keep the entities completely separate. The more separate, the better. So of course the name's going to be not anything that look like each other. And if you can, a different business address, that would be ideal to me as well. Even if it's a UPS store type of address, that's better. And banking, keep the banking separate. You can use the same bank that you've got, but just separate as much as you possibly can, those two entities and their operations. That's number one. Do you have partners in your operating business? Just you, okay. And any other shareholders besides you?
Single member Ellis.
Okay, so you're okay. Just separate every part of the operating aspect of both businesses as much as you can. And whatever that is the truth. If it's, wide separation, great. If it's just a little bit, that's the best you can do, but just keep it separate. That's most important. Yeah. Yep.
Last question here.
I do have kind of a question like that. I think thinking through, if you have, say your business is the one that's making the money and you're trying to start your investment business, you're using your personal profit to pay for this business. So how do you separate that because you don't have the money to dish out?
Maybe make a loan from the operating business to the new company and document it as a loan. Put an interest rate on it. It's like the minimum is like 3% or 2.5% or something like that. Just put a real low interest rate on it. Give yourself good terms. Accrue the interest until whatever you decide to pay it back. But at least document it that you put the money in. That helps your business so that when you go for other financing on the company, you can say, I've got an asset over here. It's a loan. I'm owed this money, and that helps that as well.
So I think that's where I'm in the same predicament, kind of.
Yep.
Obviously, this is you're using this one to pay for this one because you had money to start this business, to pay up our house, to start, and then hoping for that profit to pay back this kind of.
Yeah, just make a loan, and then if you have to guarantee it by the business, or if you have to personally guarantee it, that's okay. Just document it all the way through that that's what you did. All right? That's cool.
Can we go to our first question? Do you have to make it a loan or do you just do a one-time contribution?
Yeah, either way, but I might call it a loan just to get the money back in the company where it belonged, right? Because that was the idea. It's just like if you brought an investor in, you probably have a loan. Even if they wanted it to be a contribution, they'd want also to have a loan to make sure they got their money back. That's another cause of action as an investor. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
Appreciate that. Anyone have a deal they want to chat tonight? Middle table back there, if you haven't been here before, you can put your deals, print them out, put all the details on there. Tom, you have the mic. Craig has one. Craig always has one. I should just give him the mic up first.
I have two houses in Gary. One is 3718 Madison Street, brick bungalow. The house next door appraised for $83,000. They're actually flipping the house next door at 3714. This particular property needs some work, but it has good bones. That particular property is, I think, 315. I have a property at 230 Rutledge Street, Gary, Indiana. Brick home, new roof, newer windows. It's probably about 92 to 95% done. And all utilities are on both of those houses. And that particular property is 25.
Anyone else have anything?
Hi, I'm Vince, and I'm a real estate agent. We just listed a house in Chesterton. It's 6 bedroom, 2 fireplaces, 2.5 baths on half an acre, and it is $135. And the house next door sold last year for $265. So there's a lot of room.
Anyone else? I have a 4-unit in Maryville, the ones that are off Wickham. It's townhouse style, so they're all individually, they have their own private entrances. 2 end units are 3 beds, 1.5 bathrooms. The 2 middle ones are 2 beds, 1.5 bathrooms. I bought it a year ago with the exit strategy of selling it after a year, so I only have to pay long-term capital gains. 3 of the 4 units are rented. I'm leaving the 1 unit vacant. They just left, so I can show people. So if you're interested in that, catch me after the meeting or sometime this week. Anyone else? Good, good, good. Cool. Next month, we have a representative coming down from Midland. They're an IRA company out of Chicago. They're going to talk to us about the ABCs of 1031 exchanges. Who's done a 1031 in here? A couple of folks. One of the big advantages is when you sell a property that you have as an investment, you're going to have to recapture the depreciation and pay capital gains. 1031, you get to roll all of that money into a new property and delay your capital gains. So now that the market is hot and we're able to sell properties at stupid high prices right now, it might not be a bad idea to start unloading some investment properties and then roll that into something bigger. So we're going to have a representative from them come down and walk us through the basis, because that's one of those things, if you don't hit the timeline and get things set up, you can't go back after the fact. You've got to do it in a specific order. So excited about that. The following month, we're going to have a panel, women in real estate. I know, not to be sexist, but as women in a field that's mainly dominated by men, you have your own issues. So we're going to have a panel to discuss some of those things, some of the challenges. Really cool. I've talked to a few folks about that. If you want to be on the panel and you have some experience flipping houses or as a landlord and you identify as a female, talk to me and we'll see if you qualify to be on the panel. The following month, we're probably going to have an appraiser. And I know we've been trying to get that for a long time. They're all so busy. And we have a mold remediation guy. I think that's the rest of the year. So I think there was one more. So we're packed for the rest of the year. So we're going to be here third Monday of every month. Bring a guest. Let's pack this room. We have 200 chairs in here. And he keeps asking me when we're going to have to add more chairs. So let's pack this the next couple of months. And again, if you're not on the Facebook page, jump on that. And we'll see you next month. Real quick before you go, if you could take all your trash that you leave under your seat, this isn't a movie theater, and just dump it at one of the trash cans. That would help us out a ton. Yeah,
Pleasure. Nice to meet you. Probably emailed me and I haven't been able to find it. I had put it in I apologize for
You emailed me. I guess it's about
it was last month.
That's
It's a man thing. I have a question about mortgage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What's that?
You have one?
I have one now, yes.
They're charging.
They forced me as a landlord to be responsible for the sewers and the trash, and Portage, the city of Portage, because the city of Portage is monopolized. And they've done that for years, they own the property since 2003. And then I had another house in Portage that I bought in 2006. And then they sued the prior owner, who was leasing